Hello and welcome back to the latest edition of the Morning Bulletin here on the Blood Red channel. I'm your host, Edward Kay. Joining me today is Liverpool.com's Ben Bocsak, and we're going to be sort of going over at the Liverpool-Arsenal 2-2 draw at the weekend again. Obviously, we'll start with the incident between Andy Robertson and the linesman. PGMOL releasing a statement yesterday. Obviously, they released one during the course of the game saying it was under investigation, and then they've released one yesterday saying that the linesman involved, I think it's Konstantin Hatzidakis. I hope I've not butchered his last name too badly there. But releasing a statement saying he won't be refereeing any games or appointed to any games during the course of the investigation. First of all, Ben, do you think that's probably the right step to take?
Absolutely. I think, as long as he's being investigated, I think, he shouldn't be involved. It is a sort of grave accusation that Robertson is making. We've seen the clips. They look pretty damning, but at this point, we're going to have to wait for the investigation to see what really happened and trust the FA that they make the right decision. But until then, I think it's right for him not to be involved in any matches.
Yeah, I personally, I've sort of been in two minds about it. When I first saw it, there was sort of rumblings around the ground at half time. People obviously on Twitter on their phones have seen that something's happened. Didn't really catch wind of it. Checked it out on Twitter in the car on the way back. And to be honest, at first I thought it just sort of looked like he'd shrugged him off. But the more you look at it, and then you see people saying things like, "Well, if that was the other way around, Mitrovic has just been given an 8-game ban for." Not much more than that, really. After a couple of weeks before, obviously, Bruno Fernandes got off scot-free when he pushed the official at Anfield. So there doesn't really, obviously, there's no precedent really in terms of an official laying hands on a player. There is a very inconsistent precedent they've also set in terms of, recently players laying hands on officials and what can happen there. So what do you think sort of might be an appropriate recourse for this one?
Like you said, it's hard to tell because there is no precedent. I mean, all we can go off is Robertson was clearly aggrieved by this. He supposedly was pretty shocked in the tunnel at halftime when it was coming off. Kind of couldn't really believe what had happened. And I think as well as referees, you have to set an example and you have to be the bigger person on the pitch. So while I can understand his sort of frustrations at, it must be annoying. You can just imagine the type of stuff footballers come up to you and say, and it can be frustrating. But at the same time, I think you have to set an example, and that wasn't, or it looked like in that clip, it wasn't really what was happening there. So it's going to be interesting to see, I think, for the FA as well. I think they'll have to set an example if they do find that, he was in the wrong. In that case, the FA will have to set an example with this referee, and I think it's going to be a significant punishment, probably, if that is the case.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people sort of online. Obviously, a lot of rival fans. Not everyone's the biggest fan of Robertson. Obviously, everybody of a Liverpool persuasion absolutely loves him. A lot of rival fans say he sort of had it coming, things like that. But like you say, first of all, officials have got to be held to a higher standard than that. And second of all, I think every team in the Premier League has got at least one player where all the rival fans think they're asking for it. They're that sort of player. They get under opposing fans' skin. I mean, God knows, United have got about 6 of them in their squad. The likes of Bruno Fernandes. Everyone's got one, and I don't think that means you can just be giving officials a free license to sort of swing the elbow at them if they're not too happy with what's been said to them. But we'll move away from this for now. Obviously, we'll see what the outcome of that investigation is, and as you said, it could be quite the punishment coming for the linesman, depending on which side the PGMOL and the FA come down on. But we'll move on now to Trent Alexander-Arnold's positioning against Arsenal. The first 30 minutes, everybody in the ground sort of noticed he was, taking up a lot more inside position, sort of like John Stones has been doing for City recently and like Zinchenko has been doing for Arsenal all season. It didn't really work for the first 40 minutes, to be honest. A lot of people grumbling around the ground, a lot of people very antsy about it. Obviously ended up working out pretty well in the end. But for those first 40 minutes, I mean, what were you thinking, Ben?
Yeah, it was. I mean, for the first 40 minutes, it was pretty much just the same old Liverpool. Not just Alexander-Arnold, but I thought Martinelli was having a lot of fun. Alexander-Arnold was kind of exposed. Robertson and Konate didn't really cover for him that you kind of need when you're playing in that sort of role. But then in the second half in particular, that seemed to change. I think Liverpool sort of grew accustomed to Alexander-Arnold shifting deep. Henderson came in to cover, and Konate was just, he had a monstrous performance. It was absolutely brilliant in terms of his defending. He just didn't let any Arsenal counter-attacks happen, and was really good in terms of that. And then, yeah, Alexander-Arnold, he kind of freed up, and that's when he's best, when he's free and he's a bit able to roam anywhere. And you saw how dominant his display was. I think he had his best pass completion rate in that game, made the most recoveries I think he's made in the Premier League this season. And on top of that, he created the most chances on the pitch and got that very, very important assist as well, right towards the end of the game. So yeah, it was a pretty vintage Alexander-Arnold performance in the end.
Yeah, Konate was absolutely unbelievable. I want to sort of prod you on that, because do you think that that's a system that Liverpool could? I mean, they've got away with playing it against the league leaders, and they've come away with a 2-2 draw at home. But like you say, Konate was absolutely unbelievable, and you've got to think, if he's not having his best game, do you still think that's a system Liverpool can get away with playing?
I think so, particularly next season, if we have a holding midfielder coming in and, that there's more of a protection. But I do have to give credit to Henderson as well, because I thought he played really well, particularly in the second half. And he did his fair share of covering as well, which made Konate's job almost a little bit easier as well. So I think credit where credit's due. I mean, Henderson hasn't been the greatest this season, but particularly in this game, I think he did well. And I think that helps as well. If they can get this sort of balance right between Henderson, Konate, and Trent Alexander-Arnold, then I think there could be a really good sort of formation and the sort of tactic developing there. And I think, as much as Salah is going to get criticism for his penalty miss, and, you could see his head drop a little bit, he did also make 20 touches in Arsenal's penalty box, which was the most by any player in the Premier League this season in a single game. And I think Klopp highlighted the fact when he was asked about Trent's positioning, how that freed up the space for Salah, so Liverpool were able to find him more often and he could cause more damage. And I think we definitely saw that. He cut in a couple of times. Ramsdale made a few very good saves. And I think in terms of that aspect as well, this formation sort of change tweak could actually bring out the best of Salah as well.
Yeah, I think we saw a lot of really the duality of Liverpool with Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back over the course of that game. The first 40 minutes, he was sort of not really anywhere to be seen in the right back position, people having to come and cover for him, and it was a bit sketchy. But then in the second half, creatively, I mean, we'll talk about that assist. Maybe Reece James comes to mind. Is there any other right back in the league that could, pull off a skill like that? Nutmeg Zinchenko. And then I thought the cross was the more impressive bit. The way he's sort of stuck in his feet, the way he's dug that out to the back post with Firmino. Is there any other right back in the league that can do that?
I mean, I think the cross in particular, I don't think so. I don't think there's any sort of, maybe very few players in the league that can even pull off that cross, not just right back. So, I mean, his sort of technique and the way he can cross the ball, his vision is very unique. There's few players in world football who can do what he does. And I think that's why all this criticism has been so unnecessary for Trent. Yes, his defending hasn't been up to the standard that you'd expect, but his defending has never been a huge asset. Liverpool have always covered for him and have protected him in some ways. But the reason why he's on the pitch is because he can create moments like that. And, last season he got 19 assists in all competition. This season he hasn't quite been up to par, but that's why you have Alexander-Arnold on the pitch, because he, in this regard, he is world class. And I know Gary Neville said he's never going to become a world class fullback, but Gary Neville hasn't won. Well, kind of has, but he's also got a few trophies, but he has never been in that conversation in his entire career, and I think Alexander-Arnold is and has been in that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's nice when Trent does something like that, really, because it's a very timely reminder of just why he is in that team. There's so few players on the pitch that can do what he does, and if he is lacking a little bit defensively, it's worth it, in my opinion. And that's exactly why he's been such a fixture of this Liverpool team that's been winning everything over the past few years. But that is all we've got time for on the Morning Bulletin today. So, Ben, thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you tomorrow.